Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
We are ready for the event.
CBS News, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Bill Horowitz, CBS News. How you guys doing? How do you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear, Bill. We're doing great.
Hey, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. And Scott, I think I'm going to start with you. I mean, standard question for a guy up in space for nearly a year. How's it going? I mean, you're nearing the halfway point anyway, but how are things proceeding for you?
Yeah, things are going great. In about 2 weeks, I'll come up on the amount of time I was here on my flight last time, which was 159 days. I think I'm about 143 right now. I have a lot of energy. I'm able to focus. I think I have a pretty good attitude about it. A year's a long time, but I'm still, looking forward to the rest of this flight. And we got a lot of great things coming up that we're going to do. And it's been a great experience so far.
Well, as someone looking in from the outside, in a couple of weeks, Gennady Padalka, your Soyuz commander, is going to be heading back to Earth. And you and Mikhail Kornienko, of course, are going to be staying to complete your mission. And it strikes me that'll be quite a moment. I mean, most astronauts would be thinking about coming home right now or packing or something like that. But you and Mikhail will be looking ahead to what amounts to an entirely new mission. I just wonder how you look at that, how you process that. Seems kind of daunting to me.
Well, I think Misha and I will both be very upset with Gennady when he leaves us, and maybe a little bit envious. But, I think I'm kidding there. But, Gennady, we'll definitely miss him. He's a great crew member, has been a great commander. But I think your perception and what you're anticipating, I guess, the length you're anticipating is what's really important and kind of, maybe affects your fatigue level. I think there is that kind of 2/3 phenomena where, when you get 2/3 of the way into something, you can start seeing the end from where you are. That's when maybe in a flight like this, the fatigue might build up. I was worried that maybe that was really just at the 3 or 4 month point that would happen, but I think it really is. It's based on what your expectations are, and my expectation coming this was a year. So, I don't feel like I should be coming home right now, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. You've been asked about this in almost every interview, and I like your strategy of, I guess, you count up instead of counting down. You mentioned you still have a lot of energy and you're positive. Is there anything that is wearing on you a little bit as you think ahead?
I certainly miss a lot of things on Earth without question, but I think, that's the case with anyone who's been up here for a long time. Actually, I'll quote Gennady again, and he puts it very well. He says, when you're in space, you dream of, or when you're on Earth, you dream of being in space, and when you're in space, you dream of being on Earth. So it depends on where you are. You kind of wish you were in the other place. I do sense a little bit of that, but I understand the importance of this mission. We're doing a lot of great stuff up here, a lot of science, 400 different science experiments while I'm here over the year. So, I just recognize, the importance of this, how this is part of our future journey to Mars, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, let me ask you one more quick one about science before I get to Kjell here. I don't want to ask you to review all the science you guys are doing up there because we'd be here for days, but I will ask you about the vision research. I know you were doing some of that earlier today, or at least so I was told. I'm just curious, is there anything going on with your eyesight that's noticeable to you?
I actually think it's noticeably a little bit better. I would say, I didn't quite look at the data. Although I actually got some of my results today, just the 2020 kind of data. I was just curious, but I think I think it's a little better than it was on the ground, and a little bit better than it was earlier in the mission. I think I did have a little bit of an effect early on, but now it doesn't seem to have as much of an impact. I'm actually thinking about maybe on a spacewalk not wearing my glasses, which I normally wear those for both reading and a little bit of a distance correction. But the the distance vision seems like it's gotten a little bit better, so I might go without.
That's really interesting. That's fascinating. Kjell, let me ask you a couple here. You've spent years and years on the road to becoming an astronaut, and now you're 25 days or so into your first mission. Can you give us a sense of your first impressions? I mean, what were you thinking that first day aboard station when you were finally alone at the end of the day, kicking back and just knowing you were finally there?
Well, it's this really kind of represents for a lot of the people that come up here a dream come true. And I mean, this is just an incredible place to be, an incredible place to live and work. And so the rocket ride, of course, was amazing. But after docking and coming through that hatch, coming into this space station that we see on television, we train in a mock-up in Houston. But to come into this actual thing, to float into this, was just exhilarating and almost overwhelming. Just the fact that, that the crew that I came up with, Oleg and Kimmy and I, were actually up here. And, the time that we've spent up here these past 25 days have been incredible. Getting to look down at the Earth, getting to learn how to live and work in this environment, how to keep things organized and not make a mess of myself when I'm eating.
What's been the biggest surprise for you so far?
I think the biggest surprise for me is how quickly, me personally, but talking with Kimmy as well, how quickly we adapt to this environment. Floating, being in this microgravity environment, would seem so foreign, and yet I think after really a couple of weeks, it feels almost natural, and it doesn't seem like it should be that way. It should always kind of remain novel and new, but I think your brain just kind of adapts to it, accepts that, hey, this is the new reality, and you start to thrive.
What's the most fun for you? I mean, is that it? Is weightlessness it? If somebody asks you what's the most fun?
I think the most fun thing for me, aside from being able just to do something like that whenever you feel like it, is being able to share this experience. And so I try and keep in touch with friends and family through email and using the phone, and try to share some of what I'm discovering on Twitter and through social media, just to share the things that we get to see and do up here.
Scott, what about you? You're more than 300 days of space experience, I guess, at this point. What's the most fun for you?
A lot of this, there's one thing that I like about flying in space more than anything else. And, some people might think it's looking at the Earth or floating around. And, like Kjell put it, in some ways you kind of get used to that. What I like is the challenge of just doing the mission in general, how what we do is so complicated. We do it with a great group of people, not only here on board with our crewmates, but also all the folks on the ground, the people in mission control, the people that train us, the engineers, and it's the the sense of accomplishment I get from it. It's someday, I don't know when that'll be, but when I'm done doing this, it's something I'm really going to miss. That sense of satisfaction you get from working hard at something that's hard, and then being successful at it.
Well, let me shift gears for briefly and ask you guys a couple of operational questions. You're going to have 9 people on board early next month, which hadn't happened in a while. I mean, visitors are rare. I assume you're looking forward to that. I wonder how crowded it is on the station and what you're looking forward to about that.
Well, we are really looking forward to this this next crew that's coming up and is going to be spending about 10 days up here. Of course, Gennady will take that Soyuz home, and Sergei will stay up here with us. But having that group of people up here, back when the shuttle was flying, we would often have many more than that up here. The space station is a large volume, and there's plenty of room for this extra crew, for this crew of 9 that we're going to have up here at one time. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's fun to have folks up here, and it's going to be great to see Andy Mogensen come through the door and just see him experiencing what Kimmy and I experienced for the first time just a month ago.
Guys, this has been a tumultuous several months in terms of station resupply with those back-to-back failures of a Progress in April and then a SpaceX Dragon cargo ship. You guys have had a successful Progress flight since then, But how important is tomorrow's Japanese HTV launch to build up the station's reserves again?
Yeah, it's pretty important. We're in good shape right now, but if for some reason HTV didn't get here, we get pretty low on certain consumables, probably in late September, early October time frame. I'm sure we would figure out ways to bridge the gap on those things and get us to a orbital or SpaceX, whichever one makes it first, or even get some supplies up here on a progress. But if for some reason HTV gets delayed for a significant amount of time or something else happens, we do run into some issues at that point. We've been pretty good about dealing with those things, and I'm sure we will. We would figure out a way around it, but it is a very important launch for us coming up.
Well, I misspoke. Obviously, that launch is Wednesday, not Tuesday. But one of the questions I jotted down was, could station support a six-person crew, I should say, if you had another resupply failure this calendar year? I mean, no one expects that, obviously, but if it happened, do you think you could keep 6 people up there in terms of the workarounds you're talking about, or do you think there'd be some chance you might have to go back down to 3 for a while?
Of course, as Scott said, this is an important launch. This HTV launch is important, but I'm confident the ground would figure out ways to make sure that we stayed supplied and safe, and that we had the capabilities that we need to do the science and the work up here that we need to do. And if we didn't have enough supplies, we'd have to deal with that situation when it came up.
Well, of course, commercial resupply, actually any resupply, is just one aspect of station operations. NASA's also developing commercial cruise ships to end the sole reliance on the Soyuz, but Congress seems reluctant to fund that program. It's almost like a catch-22. Congress is saying Soyuz contract extensions are evidence the agency doesn't have confidence in Boeing and SpaceX, that they'll get there. NASA's saying, well, we have to extend Soyuz because Congress hadn't funded us. What's going on there? I mean, how important is getting commercial crew up and running? Are you guys worried about that?
I think everything you said is pretty much true. We need funding to get a commercial crew capability, and we didn't get what we asked for this time, and then we had to secure some more Soyuz seats through extending that contract to have our crew members get up here. So commercial crew is very important to us. I hope we'll get there with the current funding. I don't think we'll get there on the current schedule, obviously, or the schedule that we would have liked. But it is very important, and hopefully, people will recognize this and give NASA the support we need to get it done.
You'd all worried that this funding scenario might force NASA to down select to just one provider, and would that be a concern to you?
I really hadn't considered that. I'm not involved in the commercial crew program right now, at least, and I had not given that much thought. But now that you mention it, yeah, that is obviously that would be a concern, and that I think would maybe be a likely outcome. That kind of makes sense. That if you don't have enough money, you might have to down select to one sooner than you would like, and I would imagine that would eat into some of your margin for success. If you have 2 vehicles being built and one of them doesn't work out, you still got the other one, and down selecting earlier than we like would probably make that I wouldn't say necessarily less safe, but less of a likelihood that we'll get the vehicle that we want in the time that we would want if we have to make those decisions sooner.
Well, just one more along those lines. One of the criticisms, I guess, from some politicians anyway, is the nature of commercial contracts is they worry about safety, lack of oversight at NASA and safety. But you guys are the ones who are going to be trusting your lives on these things. What are your thoughts about flight safety? Are you guys comfortable with the commercial contracting setup to ensure your safety?
That's an interesting question. So, we call this a commercial crew capability, and NASA didn't build the space shuttle. The space shuttle was built by Rockwell with pretty significant NASA oversight, but Boeing built the space station. I mean, most of the the USOS hardware up here is Boeing, a lot, Lockheed Martin, a bunch of different aerospace companies. NASA generally doesn't cut metal on things and put things together. We manage the programs, we design, we test. But as far as the actual building, has been, throughout the history, I think, of the space program left to commercial companies. Now, in this case, we're doing something different in that we're not having as much oversight and we're not the manager of the program. So it is conducted differently. So, we have to put different kinds of safeguards into things. But, like I said earlier, I'm not that familiar with the details, but I think safety is very important to NASA. It's one of our most important things, if not the most important thing. And I think we are putting the appropriate safeguards to build a vehicle with a commercial contractor without the kind of typical or historical oversight that we've had.
Well, thanks. I've got about 4 minutes left. I want to shift gears once again and ask you a question about social media, which is playing an increasing role, it seems. I mean, I sit here on my computer every day and see pictures you guys tweet out, which are pretty stunning. I'm especially impressed by those night shots you guys take of the aurora and star fields against the limb of the Earth, that sort of thing. How do you do that? How do you pull off those shots? They're really quite spectacular.
Well, like I said previously, that's one of the joys up here is to get to share some of the views that we get to experience. And so first of all, we get great training on the ground and cameras and using the video cameras and the other assets that we have up here. We've got great equipment up here to use, and we've got great views. I mean, we're above the atmosphere, and so we have these clear views of the stars and really spectacular views of some of the phenomenon that you don't quite get to behold on the ground. The auroras, if you're lucky and live in the southern and northern hemisphere extremes, you might get to see the aurora. But to be up here and to get to see kind of the oversight of it is pretty amazing.
Scott, how about you? You've sent down some truly spectacular sunset and sunrise pictures that a couple of those have made my iPhone home screen.
Yeah, those are, some of the pictures we take, that's how it looks with your eyeball, like the sunrise and the sunset. Others, the camera obviously makes it look better, like the aurora. I mean, the aurora is spectacular with looking at it with your eyes, but the camera does, and the settings of the camera does make it look better. Same thing with some of the Earth shots. The Earth's spectacular, but the way you use the camera can enhance that. And, I think people enjoy that. People like, beautiful pictures. And, if we could make them a little bit more beautiful with the equipment we have up here, I think that's, some artistic license I take. And I'm glad, people like yourself and other people enjoy it.
Yeah, no question about that. Well, listen, I've got one last question, or time for one last question, and I'll go back to politics one last time. I'm sure that's your favorite topic, but anyway, space hasn't really been on the political agenda so far with the presidential candidates. Donald Trump said over the weekend that he thinks a flight to Mars would be, quote, wonderful, but, quote, I want to rebuild our infrastructure first, which I don't know what to make of that. But anything you guys would like to say to all the folks that are out there throwing their hat in the ring for president about space and the need to support your all's objectives?
Well, historically, NASA's gotten not universally bipartisan support, but we do get bipartisan support, and we really appreciate that. We could always use more money. We're going to do the best with the money we're given, and when you look at the overall budget of the the U.S. budget, NASA gets a very small part of that, and I think space is an investment in our future. I think what we get from even building the space station, the economic return, the science return is very, very important to to our nation, to our economy. So I would like to see all the candidates really support us, and I think they probably do in some regard, but also support a bigger budget, like you were talking about with the the commercial crew and being able to build that vehicle on the time frame that we need to support our space station missions and our and our future missions. We need to be able to put that money into the U.S. economy, into U.S. companies and aerospace companies, versus sending it overseas. So I hope they would see that.
Guys, thank you very much. I got to wrap up. I look forward to talking to you again down the road, and have fun up there.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Thank you, CBS News Station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.